Donald Trump promised to make housing more affordable when he was campaigning to be president of the United States. He promised to cut down on federal regulations, but at the same time, he's also proposing mass deportations and tariffs throughout the country. So, what is going to happen to housing when Donald Trump becomes president? How are his policies going to affect the housing market? Will he actually be able to make housing more affordable? Will his policies have a positive effect or a negative effect on the housing market? Now, one caveat I wanted to say at the beginning of this video is that I've made videos in the past talking about whether presidential elections and presidents can really influence the housing market. And while Donald Trump's tariffs and his immigration policies will have trickle down effects into the housing market, ultimately, prices are set by the free market. They're set by supply and demand. Mortgage rates are set by the free market, at least until the Federal Reserve steps in and starts buying mortgage backed securities, which they're not doing right now. So Donald Trump may have secondary influence. He may have some influence over the housing market, but he doesn't have a direct influence, and he can't just set a cap on prices, nor is that something that he's proposing. So what we're going to do in this video is talk a little bit about the policies that Donald Trump is planning on implementing when he becomes president and how that will affect the housing market. Before we get into it, my name is Liam O'Reilly. I'm a real estate agent with Jerry Riley Real Estate here in Vermont. If you have any real estate needs, whether it's in Vermont or anywhere else, all of my contact information is in the description. Reach out to me directly and I would be happy to help you. So let's get into this first article here. This article out of CNN, Trump's housing market conundrum. So I've highlighted a few sections of this article, and you'll notice that there's green, there's yellow, there's purple. Basically, the green is what I've outlined as things that can actually make a positive change to the housing market, things Donald Trump can do that can positively affect home prices and home affordability. The stuff in red is stuff that is either fluff or it's something that likely won't affect the housing market, or it'll actually hurt home prices, make home prices go up or make housing less affordable. Now, the stuff in purple you'll see is stuff that just sounds crazy, in my opinion. So let's scroll down to this first section that we highlighted here. And this is a direct quote by Taylor Rogers, who was a spokesperson of the Trump-Vance campaign, their transition, they said. They're saying that Trump will end the affordability crisis during his upcoming term. President Trump will deliver on his promise to make housing affordable again by defeating historic inflation and reducing mortgage rates, right? So what he's claiming is that he's going to bring inflation down, and then because inflation is lower, the Federal Reserve will lower their rates and mortgage rates will come down throughout the term of his presidency. And while that is true, if he does lower inflation, that will bring mortgage rates down, but he doesn't have a direct impact over mortgage rates, right? He's not going to directly lower mortgage rates himself. He's going to try to do this by lowering inflation. But at the same time, the tariffs that he's planning on adding to the economy, those are inflationary, right? It's going to make the cost of goods imported from other countries more expensive, which could cause inflation to rise. Now, how the Federal Reserve responds and how rates react to higher inflation due to tariffs, it's something that's yet to be seen. So we'll have to watch that and see if inflation comes from these tariffs, how that will impact the overall housing market. So what he's going to do here, he's going to ban the next sentence here. President Trump will ban mortgages for illegal immigrants who drive up the price of housing. Now, I think that's all fluff. I don't think there's many illegal immigrants who are purchasing properties, right? I think a lot of the illegal immigrants who are in this country are likely renters. I don't think many of them are purchasing properties, certainly not here in Vermont that I'm aware of. So I really don't think that's going to impact home prices at all. Here, this green portion are some items that I think will actually be beneficial for housing. They'll eliminate federal regulations driving up the cost of housing, which I do think is a good thing. I think the fewer regulations we have, the better that will be for the overall housing market. And they're going to open portions of federal land with ultra low taxes and regulations for large scale housing construction. That will mainly impact the West Coast, where much of the federal land that can be developed is. So it's probably not going to impact places on the Northeast, places like here in Vermont, it's probably not going to change a thing with the housing market in the Northeast, or specifically here in Vermont. But I do think it will positively impact the housing market on the West Coast if that's something that he actually does. Now, this purple highlight here, I think this is just out of left field, and I don't think there's any possibility of this happening. The cost of new homes will be cut in half, and President Trump will end the housing affordability crisis. So what he's saying, he's not saying the cost of existing homes, but he's saying the cost to build a new home will be cut in half. And I don't see that happening. Now, we're going to hop over to this article out of realtor.com, and I think this is a good comparison from where things were from around 2010 to 2020 compared to where things are now. In this article, realtor.com is talking about their forecast for the 2025 housing market, as well as Trump's policies and how that plays into their forecast. So what they're saying here is that the forecast projects mortgage rates to end the year at 6.2%, which means we're still well above the 4% historical average recorded from 2013 to 2019. And this is something we've talked about a lot on this channel, is many people are locked into low mortgage rates. Even if they bought their home and didn't refinance in, say, 2015, the average rate was still 4%. We're still well above that 4% historical rate where most mortgages are. The forecast projects that home prices will grow an additional 3.7% next year after rising 4% this year. But sales of owned homes are projected to tick up again of 1.5%, but still below the 2013 to 2019 historical average of 5.28 million homes. So what realtor.com is predicting with this new Trump term, with the 2025 housing market, is that we are going to see an uptick in people selling their homes. And I think that's the case too. I think more people will come off of the sidelines and start listing their properties, start selling their homes. But overall, we're still likely to be well below that 2013 to 2019 historical average. Now, here's what they say about Trump. If both income growth and lower tax rates come to fruition, we could see homes become somewhat more affordable in 2025 than over the past few years. The wild card, of course, is how other policies of Trump's new administration affect the price of other goods and services. So, something that they don't really talk about too much in this article, in this CNN article, is Trump intends to remove the income tax, which I do think will be beneficial for housing affordability, right? That will put more money in people's pockets that they can use to spend however they want. Now, I do think that will be inflationary, right? You give people more money, they're likely to just spend it, right? Americans are not savers. But overall, at least at the beginning, I do think that will be beneficial. It won't bring home prices down, but what it will do it'll make housing more affordable by putting more money into people's pockets. Let's continue on in this CNN article here. So here's what he talks about. When Trump talks about removing regulations from the overall economy, or removing regulations from housing, the thing is, he can only really affect federal regulations, and he can't affect local regulations that much as the United States president. So the Association of Home Builders found that regulations accounted for $93,000 of a typical new home's final price, which is crazy. At that time, the average price of a home was $394,000. As of November, it's $484,000. So basically what they're saying is about a quarter of the new construction cost is due to regulations, which is mostly local regulations, right? It's not federal regulations, it's mostly local. And that's what they say here. However, many of these regulations are the result of local laws, something that Trump promised not to meddle with during his first term. So he said he wasn't going to mess with local laws during his first term. We'll see what happens in his second term here. I think that it's easier for him to remove federal regulations on building. It's much harder to remove those local regulations throughout the country. And that's really what would impact home prices, is if we were able to remove some of those local regulations that are adding about a quarter of the new home's price to build. We're going to scroll down and take a look at some of his other quotes, right? We already talked about tariffs. Higher interest rates would also hurt home builders' ability to ramp up new homes. So what they're saying here is that the tariffs that take place, right? If Trump enacts tariffs and that causes more inflation, the Federal Reserve might keep their rates high. The bond market might remain high, with higher inflation due to these tariffs, which would ultimately hurt home prices, right? Higher mortgage rates make it harder for people to lend money to buy properties, and it makes it harder for builders to lend money to build properties, or more expensive for builders to lend money in order to build properties, which makes the final product at the end of the day more expensive. Overall, there's no clear way to know exactly how Trump's policies will affect the overall housing market. I think the most likely scenario is that Trump's policies will be a wash, that maybe there'll be higher inflation because of the tariffs that he has, and that will result in higher interest rates. But at the same time, he might open up federal land and reduce some building regulations, which will bring the cost to build new construction down. So overall, I don't think Trump is going to do anything major with the housing market. There's not going to be, a branch of the government that all of a sudden starts building housing, nor do we want that here in the United States. We don't want to build Soviet style apartment buildings just so people have a place to live. What we want to do is we want to reduce the amount of regulations and make it easier and more affordable for people to build new homes here in the United States. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.